That day was unusually quiet and overcast as I drove through the dense forest. I had been on the road for hours, and my stomach was grumbling in protest. The fuel gauge was also nearing empty. I felt relieved when I saw a sign indicating a small town ahead. As I entered the town, the first thing I noticed was the eerie silence. There was no human activity to be seen, and the atmosphere was unsettling. Rows of houses lined the streets, with dark windows and closed doors. The town seemed trapped in time, giving off the impression of a place stuck in the past. I headed towards the gas station, hoping to refuel and maybe grab something to eat. But when I arrived, I was greeted by an unusual sight. The gas pumps were operational, but there was no attendant in sight. Curious, I entered the convenience store connected to the gas station. To my surprise, the store was fully stocked with fresh produce, canned goods, and snacks. However, once again, there was no one around. The cash register was open, the lights were on, but the emptiness was unnerving. Deciding to continue my journey, I drove further into the town, hoping to find a restaurant or diner. As I navigated through the winding streets, I noticed something strange. Many houses had their doors open, and I could see tables set with prepared meals. It was as if the residents had left in a hurry, leaving their food untouched. With my growing sense of unease, I decided to leave the town and continue on my way. As I drove towards the exit, something caught my eye. A large group of people seemed to be gathered at a restaurant up ahead. Relieved to see signs of life, I parked my car and approached the establishment. As I entered the restaurant, I was greeted by a bizarre sight. The place was packed with people, yet there was an eerie silence. No one looked up as I walked in. They were all engrossed in their meals and conversations. However, what caught my attention was the drink. Everyone seemed to be consuming a bright yellow liquid that glowed faintly. My growing curiosity led me to approach a man sitting alone at the bar. He looked up as I neared, his eyes bloodshot and his muscles visibly swollen. Without waiting for an introduction, he began to speak. "You look like you're not from around here," he said, taking a sip from his glass. "Did you know we eat very healthily in this town?" Intrigued but wary, I asked him what he meant. He gestured towards a plate of meat on the counter, a meat unlike anything I'd ever seen before, large, with a strange appearance, almost as if from another world. "I've never seen meat like this before," I remarked, trying to mask my unease. The man laughed, a sound that made my hair stand on end. "It's a special kind of meat," he said, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. "It gives us strength, vitality, power. Would you like to try some?" Before I could respond, another man appeared beside me. He was tall, with a menacing presence that made my skin crawl. "You should listen to him," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "The meat is transformative." Feeling trapped, surrounded by people who seemed to be partaking in something extraordinary, I excused myself and hurried out of the restaurant. Years passed, but the memory of that strange town always haunted me. I often found myself wondering what had become of its residents and the mysterious meat they consumed. So, when I drove past the town again, I couldn't resist the urge to revisit it. As I approached, I was greeted by a sight that sent shivers down my spine. The town was deserted. Buildings lay in ruins, windows shattered, doors hanging off their hinges. It was as if a great disaster had struck, leaving only destruction in its wake. With my heart pounding, I parked my car and cautiously stepped out. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant howl of wind. As I wandered through the deserted streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Eventually, I reached the spot where the restaurant once stood. It was now nothing more than a pile of rubble. Among the debris, I found traces of the bright yellow liquid and the strange meat. confirming that this was the place where the town's residents had gathered for their mysterious feasts.